statistics in it, it's got morphology in it. The morphology's got two parts. It's got morphotactics, which tells you what the possible sequences of morphemes are. And maybe at the moment we're in a really simple land where there are basically stems followed by one morpheme most of the time, something like that. We're talking about suffixing languages. Usually we're talking about just one suffix and so on. So we want to say that there are two kinds of, let's say, words. There are really exceptional words which are suppletive. That's to say they have two parts which just don't relate to one another. So am and is and are and were and was, that's suppletive. There are things where you have to decide whether they're really suppletive or not. So for example, the French word servir has forms like serve and forms like sert. Well, that V could have been lots of other consonants. In this case, it happens to be a V. And whatever it is, it disappears in certain forms. So you have to decide whether you're going to treat this as suppletive or not. I would say, in this case, you don't treat it as suppletive because it's perfectly easy to write rules. Okay, so that's the framework. So what we're going to do is to try and build this big system of ours. And we're going to describe the final text in terms of words which are not quite spelt in their usual way. They're going to be spelt like this. Here's the word walk, I-N-G, walking. And right here, there is a morpheme boundary. And wherever there's a morpheme boundary, well, I am writing a closed brace. Could have been lots of other things. That's the way I'm used to doing it.
We use a greater than symbol.
Okay, whatever. So these are going to appear at the bottom of our set of abstractions here. And down here, of course, we want this to look like walking. And we want running to lose its double N, and we want TRY. We want TRY close brace S to look like TRIES. But we don't want DYEING to look like DYING. We want somehow to know that although most of these disappear, that E doesn't disappear. And in traveling, the L might double and it might not double. It depends mostly upon when you're talking about British English or American English. So there are all kinds of idiosyncrasies and so on. For English, they can be captured in a set of rules that takes up one page. So what is going to happen between here and here is a transducer, simple finite state transducer with a couple of hundred states in it. And you can specify that in whatever your favorite way is for specifying transducers. You suggested Kimmo. I think Kimmo is a very unhandy way of writing transducers. I like rewriting rules. It's the extremely natural way to write things. If I had my laptop here, I would show you some of the rewriting rules. For me to try and do it out of the top of my head would be a bad idea.
Let me put some on the. Maybe I can put some on the screen.
Yeah, good.
Can you bring the Anhama? Can you bring the? Okay.
But the big question would be one transducer or two, and not whether the morphological one is done this way or the other. Right?
Well, you can do the rest of the system how you like. You can have as many transducers for whatever else you like, but for this purpose you need one. And it of course works both ways.
Sorry, give the suitcase.
Valet.
I don't
Okay, PC. I think it's
Don't
warming
go
up.
too fast.
You have to fetch the suitcase from the office and yeah,
Okay.
coming up.
No. I think I probably have to set.
Oh, there is one other thing I did want to say about them. Yes, I remember what it is now.
Sorry.
So while you're getting that, let me just make some remarks upon how you deal with idiosyncrasies in words. So this business of certain words double and certain words don't, and it turns out that that correlates with whether they're stressed on the last syllable or not. We, of course, don't care what syllable they're stressed on or not. We care about whether they doubled the last consonant or not. So we introduce what are called diacritics. This thing is a diacritic because it occurs in the lexicon, it occurs on the upper side, but never ever under any circumstances on the lower side. You can introduce diacritics for all sorts of purposes in a language where the spelling rules are really, really simple, like English. It's convenient to get by with two diacritics. I'll write them this way and this way, which is the way I usually write them. And the easiest way to think of these is you write one of these in the underlying spelling of a word when you want to mess up the possibility of a rule applying to it. So if you want to say that inter doubles its final R, and let us say that the default is when you have a doubleable consonant and it occurs in an environment where doubling takes place, then it happens by default. So what about enter? Enter ends in a doubleable consonant. It has a vowel before it, and if we have the appropriate things over here, it would double. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll stop that. I'll put that in there. It's not going to double anymore. If I want to make sure that D-Y-E, that E isn't removed before ing as it would be with loving, well, I'll deal with that, right? I just put this diacritic in there. If I want to say of travel, that L could double, but it could also not double, then I write this diacritic in there. That is to say, think of that as being a question mark as to whether it's got one of these in there or not. And the way that's going to be handled in the list of rewriting rules, it will simply be an optional rule that deletes it early in the sequence. And that's the whole story. That these two things for English are all you need to specify all the idiosyncrasies that ever crop up. That is not true of all languages. It's not even true of English if you try to deal with derivational morphology. So, for example, the prefix in occurs sometimes in words. The two prefixes in behave differently. One of them occurs in words like input, and it remains an N under all circumstances.
Well,
one occurs
in the orthography, input.
In the orthography, not in the pronunciation, but we're talking orthography here. Whereas in places like impractical, irresolute,
Impermeable.
illegal, impermeable, it changes. So the best way to deal with that, well, you could deal with it this way. Simpler way is to just say we have two types of N, and one of them behaves one way and one of them behaves the other. But they both look like N when they wind up on the surface. That's it.
So, some rewrite rules for English.
Oh, there they are, yes. Okay, consonant doubling. You can do this with, this doubles one consonant, right?
Yeah.
You can write this rule in this formalism.
Yeah.
by putting all the doubling rules there, and then
And matching.
actually the environment is
Yeah.
much richer than this. And there's one interesting doubling rule in there. So they go B goes to BB, D goes to DD, and so on, and C goes to CK.
Yeah.
Right?
Mons has this as a separate rule. He has K insertion, but I think the doubling is better.
Yeah. Yes, here's the. So this is Y goes to IE, and he has Y go to I. I can't do it that way, but and then there's the reverse of that. There's IE goes to Y, but he doesn't seem to have that one.
This is just a tutorial.
Just an example.
So, yeah.
The real one is about twice the size of
Yeah.
this. It's not a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.